What if the moment the world had been waiting for was never meant to be loud, but unforgettable in its quiet grandeur? If you are still watching, subscribe. Let's get the story started as the world of your favorite celebrity unfolds.
Stay tuned.
The story begins not with a spotlight, but with a whisper. A rumor drifting through fan communities. A hint that somewhere behind closed doors, beyond flashing cameras and scheduled appearances, a ceremony had taken place. A union not performed for headlines, but for meaning. Then comes the reveal. A video surfaces. Soft lighting. Elegant halls. The unmistakable atmosphere of a grand venue prepared for something deeply personal. Viewers lean closer to their screens, not just to see, but to feel. Because weddings, especially those involving beloved figures, are never just events. They become symbols. They become shared dreams for millions who have followed two separate journeys and imagined a shared destination. The cinematic narrator would pause here, letting the gravity settle. A wedding is not built in a day. It is built on time, on choices, on the slow weaving together of two lives that once moved independently. Every flower arrangement, every musical note, every step down an aisle represents decisions made in private long before they are witnessed in public. Imagine the scene as if the camera were gliding through it. A grand hall overlooking the river. Crystal lights reflecting like stars brought indoors. Floral arrangements designed not to overwhelm, but to whisper elegance. Guests seated in respectful anticipation, aware they are present for a moment that will echo far beyond the walls. Then the entrance. Not dramatic, not theatrical, simply composed. The kind of composure that comes from people who have lived much of their lives observed and now choose to experience a milestone with calm dignity. The air changes. Conversations fade. Attention gathers naturally, like a tide drawn to the moon. This is where documentaries find their power. In the details. A slow breath before walking forward. A glance exchanged that carries history within seconds. The subtle reassurance of presence, saying without words that the journey here was real, not scripted. Outside the venue, the world remains restless. Fans refresh pages. Communities translate fragments. Every second of footage becomes material for analysis. But inside the ceremony, time behaves differently. It slows.
It expands.
It allows moments to be fully lived. Because vows, whether heard or imagined, are less about poetry and more about promise. About choosing someone not for a season of success, but for the unpredictable chapters ahead. The narrator's voice would grow warmer. Consider how rare it is for two people with immense public recognition to protect something sacred from becoming spectacle. To draw a boundary between what is shared and what is kept. That boundary itself becomes an act of care. And yet, when a glimpse is finally revealed, it carries more weight than 1,000 staged appearances. A short video can hold the emotion of years. A single smile can silence months of speculation. Viewers do not just watch. They project their own hopes, their own beliefs in lasting connection. Weddings in the public eye become mirrors for private dreams. They remind people that behind fame are still human desires for partnership, stability, and understanding. As the imagined footage continues, there is laughter somewhere. Perhaps a toast. Perhaps a memory shared that only a few in the room fully understand. These are the invisible threads that make ceremonies meaningful beyond aesthetics. And then, like all beautiful events, it concludes quietly. No grand finale. No cinematic explosion. Just a gradual return to normalcy. Guests departing. Lights dimming. The venue returning to stillness as if holding secrets within its walls. But the story does not end there. Because the real narrative begins after the ceremony. In ordinary mornings. In shared decisions. In the balance between two demanding lives learning to move as one. That is where romance proves itself, away from orchestras and curated decor. A final documentary line might say this. Some love stories are not written for the world to read in full. They are written for two people to live. And when the world is allowed even a page, it feels privileged. So the video stuns not because it is extravagant, but because it feels sincere. because it suggests that amid an industry built on performance, there are still moments chosen for their truth. And perhaps the greatest revelation is this: the most powerful unions are not the ones most displayed, but the ones most deeply lived. And what happens when the music fades and the guests return to their separate worlds? The camera, if it were still rolling, would capture something quieter now. Not the ceremony, not the applause, not the curated beauty of a perfect day. It would capture the in-between. The moments that live after celebration and before routine. Because a wedding, no matter how grand, is only a doorway. What lies beyond it is a landscape far less photographed and far more important. Morning arrives differently after a life milestone. The air feels the same, yet something invisible has shifted. Two individuals wake not as parallel stories, but as a shared one. The world outside still buzzes with curiosity, but inside, there is a small, steady calm. Perhaps there is a table by a window, 2 cups of coffee or tea, a conversation about schedules, about upcoming projects, about ordinary responsibilities that do not pause for romance. And in that ordinariness lies the true test of partnership. The narrator would slow their tone here, because the real cinematic beauty is not in a perfectly edited highlight, but in the decision to choose the same person on a regular Tuesday when no one is watching. Fame complicates this simplicity. Every outing becomes a possibility for headlines. Every gesture can be interpreted. Privacy becomes a luxury carefully guarded. And yet, within those constraints, a couple learns to build a small world that belongs only to them. Imagine the discipline it takes to protect tenderness in an environment that profits from exposure. To keep certain smiles unshared. To let some conversations exist without ever becoming quotes. This is where love becomes less of a spectacle and more of a craft. Built quietly, maintained intentionally, protected fiercely. Outside, the public continues its fascination. Clips replay. Commentators discuss details. Admirers celebrate what they believe the union represents. Some see a fairy tale. Others see a triumph. Many see hope. But inside the life being lived, it is not a fairy tale. It is 2 humans learning each other's rhythms. One might prefer silence in the morning. The other might think aloud. One might carry worries internally. The other might speak them freely. Harmony is not automatic. It is practiced. A documentary voice would remind us that every lasting bond is a negotiation between 2 histories, 2 upbringings, 2 sets of dreams adjusting to make space for another. And there is courage in that adjustment. Courage to remain gentle in a world that can be intrusive. Courage to trust when schedules pull people to different cities and long filming hours. Courage to believe that connection can stretch across distance and still hold. If the camera panned outward, it would show the river flowing past the grand venue once again, unchanged by the event it hosted. Water does not pause for human milestones. It moves forward, carrying reflections that appear briefly and then dissolve. Life after a wedding is much the same. Moments shine, then blend into the ongoing current of days. But every so often, there is a look, a shared understanding, a quiet joke that reminds 2 people why they chose this path. These are not viral moments. They are sustaining ones. The narrator might offer a final reflection. Perhaps the world is drawn to weddings because they mark a clear beginning, a visible promise, a moment where love stands still long enough to be seen. But the deeper story is written afterward, in patience, in compromise, in loyalty that grows without announcement. So the grand ceremony that stunned viewers becomes, in memory, a single chapter. Beautiful, yes. Memorable, certainly. But only a chapter. The real story continues in unseen pages, in daily kindness, in mutual respect, in the quiet decision, again and again, to walk forward together. And maybe that is the most cinematic truth of all. Not that a wedding was grand, but that what follows has the potential to be even greater.